Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builder Supply, and this video is to bring you a closer look at the IVES number 960 BLK. This is what it looks like in its packaging. Weighs about 0.29 pound, and here's what it looks like out in the wild. A smart, petite, elegant flush pull is what this is. They certainly make them a lot larger than this one. This may be the smallest of this design that exists. It's really going to be pretty elegant for applications where you don't want to have a lot of hardware installed in a very conspicuous way. You're looking to, demure the look of hardware projecting itself, into the visual aspect of the opening. This would be very commonly used with center hung pivots and a mortised edge pull, all conspiring to leave very little evidence of what's on the door. And this does a really nice job at that. This is in the BLK, which is black. Black has become a popular finish in the last couple of years, I suppose. The year's 2020 now. Continues to be popular. From what I can tell, the offering of manufacturers in black as a finish is expanding and not contracting. It'll probably go on for it'll probably be popular for a decade, is the bottom line. Now, speaking of decade, if you go back 10 decades, black was common. Black was the finish that you would get. In the 1920s, black was in everyone's catalog. I think it would be my guess that the satin chrome that we use today in our commercial life, in this era of time, back 100 years ago, black could have been the satin chrome of the early part of the 20th century. So it's nice to be able to see that a classic finish like black is popular. 25 years ago, you wouldn't have gotten anything in black unless you were powder coating it yourself. And even then, I didn't hear a lot of people talk about, I'll just get it powder coated. Today, you hear that all the time, in fact. So let's go over some dimensional properties of this item, and we'll take a closer look at it. Now, let's take some dimensional properties. The overall height, they call it 3-inch. There is a line drawing down below that tells us that the overall height of this is 3 1/16. I'd say that'd be basically accurate. The overall width of 1 7/8. Indeed. The overall depth, they have it at 5/8. Right on. So the question becomes what do you mortise this for? There is a template listed down below, and we'll take a closer look at it. But I can tell you now that mortising for this is going to be super easy. I wouldn't consider really any tool, unless I had to do one or two and I didn't own a router and I would never need to use a router again, what I consider a hammer and chisel. You could certainly use a hammer and chisel. That will work, but you would want to use a router, in my opinion. You'd have a piece of 1x poplar. You would have that hole cut in it. You would clamp that down to the door. You would prep that hole in the 1x poplar at the proper back set. You might even get fancy and make it from the bottom of the door all the way up to that center line. So regardless of you're doing 6/8, 7/0, 8/0, 9/0, whatever door height, bottom of the door to the center line is always the same. You want to ritualize the steps of machining doors. The ritualization of the process, meaning you always do this and then always do this and then always do this, for me personally, allows me to not make mistakes. So if I'm going through the process, maybe a little absent-mindedly, of mortising something, and I've realized, did I do that? The head scratching, when you ritualize your behavior of prepping, you don't often head scratch because you are going step A to step B to step C, and you never go in any other fashion. So if you're doing these all the time, I would ritualize the process, because you don't, the point of this being basically a piece of hardware that doesn't show off too much from the face of the door. Having a good preparation is going to be part and parcel to the success of it. And the reason I'm saying all of that is this is held in with screws, as you can see, evidence, and the screws are here. Okay, you're not going to have a lot of room between the OD, what you're going to mortise it to, and the body size itself. And in my experience, and we're going to switch to the template in a moment, the second best tool of the woodworker is the caliper, the router being the first. when I get things like this, I will always, without exception, put the caliper on the tool, or on the hardware, 1.423, 1.423, and then I'm going to decide what sort of margin I would like. I'd want it to be as tight as possible. Not so tight that I couldn't make a very minor adjustment, and not too loose that my screw is going to not hit anything. I'm going to want this screw, which is pretty short to begin with, maybe 5/8. Well, 3/4 probably. Yeah, 3/4. I'm not going to want that screw to be wasted at not hitting anything, so I'm going to want it to hit as quickly as possible. Plus, it's very likely that you're putting it into particle board, so you're going to want that to be in there as tight as possible. Okay, or not as tight as possible, but as tight as possible. You don't want to get the screws too tight in there. You know, so you could, if you know, it's never really happened, but it has occurred to me that if you had trouble, you could drill a hole, insert a dowel, and then pre-drill that dowel, you know, glue the dowel into the particle board. Anyway, lots of ways to go about doing that, I suppose. Let's switch to the screen view now, and let's take a closer look at the supporting documentation, and in particular, the template. Here is the item that we are looking at. Flush pull, 3-inch in matte black. Dimensional properties I mentioned earlier. I did not measure the inside opening, and that is a valid question. 29/32, yes, I'd say accurate. Inside height of 2 5/16, yes, plus or minus a 32nd. You'll notice that there's some, you'll notice that this area here, that's an open cavity. That's to get your fingers wrapped in and around. Let's look at the product brochure, then we'll dump into the template. This is a relatively new offering from IVES. They've made rectangular flush pulls. Historically, they haven't. If you go back 30 years, IVES didn't make any items like this commercial type material. This oval size, that they always made an oval, and it might be the 227. Don't quote me, but they've always had an oval flush pull. But these are all relatively recent designs. Design additions, I should say. So let's now take a look at the template. Let us rotate that. Here we go. Let's rotate it a couple more times. Okay, so all of this is review. We've gone over this. Here's your template, and I think that they're giving you the mortise dimension. I would say that yes, that they are 1.5 inches. Yeah, 1.5 inches looks good to me. 2 11/16. Yeah, I would go with both of those dimensions. 9/16 deep. Right on. I'd have no trouble with any of those dimensions at all. 1.5 inches wide, 2 11/16 by 9/16 deep. That's what I would prep. You'll have to square those corners out a little bit. You have to square the corners out, you know, to fit the hardware into the unit. You'll have to square out that corner that's there. The question becomes is what height do you put it at? And I would take an audit of the rest of the doors in the space, and I would match those openings. You know, I would put it at, depending if it's residential or commercial. Residential is going to be closer to 36 inch off the floor. Commercial is going to be just a hair over 40 inch off the floor. This is not handicap compliant, so it's likely that if you're using this in a commercial space, you'll be doing so maybe in a private office, but nothing. This would be incorrect for a handicap compliant opening. Residential applications, yeah, great. We then need to go on and talk about, you know, once you've got the height determined, what back set. Again, I would audit the doors that you already have, 2 3/8 to the center line, maybe 2 3/4, maybe greater than that. You know, you have to take into account your stop. You have an installation. You've got a door. You know, what's the projection of the stop? Where do you want to see that preparation here? You know, what center line from the back set, from the edge of the door to the center of the hole. So keep in mind how much the stop encroaches into the space. You know, again, audit the other doors within the space as well. Now, let's take a look here. There is the product brochure. Let's look at that. Sorry, we've already looked at that. There are other finishes which were mentioned in that product brochure. Interestingly enough, however, black was not among them. 605 polished brass, 613 oil rub bronze, 626 satin chrome, and they are certainly just powder coating this item black. So it's going to be a brass base material on the exposed face. Everything that you see here is going to be made of brass. The portion here that makes up the underside of it, that is some sort of a zinc-coated sheet metal that has been riveted, well, or peened on. There are literally nails that appear to hold that in place. That's going to be powder coated as well. And obviously everything inside of here will have that black fill on it. Now there's also a link below this video here to the manufacturer's page where we can pull up that page. We'll be able to take a look at all of the IVES products that we sell by means of this horizontal navigation as seen here. There's also a link to the manufacturer's website, okay, as well as a link to the product catalog. And let's fire that up. I don't know if the 960 is in this catalog. It is. Very good. Decorative flush pulls. When you do a Control F or find function on your keyboard for 970, you'll find it. If you recall, I mentioned the name 227. It's not oval. 223 is the one I was thinking of. So in this section of the product catalog is where the flush pulls will be. Very residential in nature, like this 3/4 inch ID finger pull, or thereabouts. Yeah, inside cup diameter, 3/4 inch. Typical 221s, you'll see this forever. These have been manufactured for decades. This is a nice one, the 222. It's heavy, it's petite, it's robust, it is elegant in shape. It's not just wrought material like this is. Yeah, this is wrought. So it's a more robust version because it's cast versus being wrought or stamped, I suppose. 227, this would be wrought as well. Then you get into the decorative material, the 950, a little bit bigger than the one we're looking at. The 955, substantially larger. Then the petite 960. The 962 is by far a much more common unit because it's larger. It's almost 4 inch tall. And there you go. Edge pulls are here. This is a pocket door bolt. You don't bump into those often. It's not many people who know what those do. But if you've got a pocket door and want a means by which to provide a lock on the inside or like a privacy function, this would be that item. Sliding door pulls as well. Okay, let's wrap up this video on camera. Now, if you still have that manufacturer's page open, I did forget or neglect to point out to you in the upper left-hand corner, there's a couple of catalogs there, 1896 and 1904. IVES goes back, yes, to the 19th century. Historically, I think a lot of, back in the 1990s or 1980s, the old-timers would have thought of IVES as synonymous with window hardware, sash locks, lift pulls, varieties of that material. And indeed, that's what those catalogs have a preponderance of, those old IVES catalogs. Well, IVES got into making more in the builder's hardware range, and then becoming under the Allegiant umbrella, IVES is the trim and auxiliary arm of her sister companies, which are Schlage, LCN, Von Duprin, Glenn Johnson, Monarch, Zero. So the Allegiant can field a complete solution when it comes to everything that would be needed for a door opening in your commercial, most obviously commercial, residential applications as well. The name IVES is synonymous today with pivots and pin and barrel hinges, where 20 years ago or 30 years ago, that was not the case. You were not buying pivots from IVES at all. You would be buying lid stays, residential brass lid stays, and not commercial pivots. But of course, Allegiant obviously needed a trim and auxiliary manufacturer to complete their complement of companies. You know, the name is synonymous within the industry for trim and auxiliary hardware. You can't really go wrong with them. Their tech support is pretty good. I know their tech support people work in other areas under the Allegiant umbrella, and they're all exceptional people. Any questions on the IVES 960 in a black finish or any other IVES product, please feel free to reach out to us. And thank you. Again, thank you for watching, and if you've enjoyed this video, please click thumbs up. Please subscribe and maybe even send the video to someone that you know. Thank you.